Can you believe she's doing nothing, even though she's about to have a baby? What kind of parenting did you do? When I opened the front door, I saw my daughter Jessica and her husband, Thomas. He was frowning and complaining about dust under the table and a dirty bathroom floor. He seemed to think Jessica not cleaning meant I failed as a parent. It's hard for her to bend down with her big belly. If he cares so much, why doesn't he clean it himself? Before I could respond, Thomas reached for the door. I can't deal with someone who can't keep a house clean. I'm leaving her, he said. I'm Rebecca, and I turned 54 this year. I work for a big company. After losing my husband, I raised Jessica alone. It wasn't easy, but her smiles made it worth it. Jessica grew up to be kind and thoughtful, but she struggled in romantic relationships. I hoped she'd find someone in high school, but she didn't even date in college. Now, she works for a food manufacturer, and there are no rumors about her dating. I worried about her being alone when I'm gone. Then, Jessica told me she was dating a man she met through a friend. After 2 years, they got engaged, and I felt relieved. It's bittersweet to see her move out, but I'm glad she'll have a family. They live about an hour from me. Thomas is 4 years older than Jessica and very ambitious. He often works late or goes out, leaving all the chores to Jessica. I thought they should share the responsibilities but didn't want to interfere. About 6 months after their wedding, Jessica invited me to lunch to tell me she was pregnant. She always wanted kids and often talked about wanting a little brother or sister. Seeing her gently rub her belly filled me with joy. Don't hesitate to call me if you need anything, I told her before we parted. Since Jessica continued to work during her pregnancy, I made sure to check in on her regularly. When I got a big work project that required travel, she was excited for me and told me to focus on my job, assuring me she would be fine. I asked Thomas several times to look after Jessica while I focused on my work. By now, Jessica should be close to her final month of pregnancy since my project was winding down. I called to discuss plans for after the baby arrives, but to my surprise, Thomas answered the phone. Hey, Rebecca, good timing. Jessica's pretty useless and in the way, so I'm bringing her over to your place. What do you mean? I asked, but he hung up before I could get an answer. An hour later, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found a disheveled Jessica standing next to Thomas. I was shocked at how much she had changed. She couldn't even muster a smile. Dark circles were under her eyes, and her hair, nails, and skin looked dry. She looked nothing like a woman in her 20s. Her fingers were cracked and bleeding, and her expression was dark, her gaze unfocused. How could she have deteriorated so much in just a few months? I let them in and had them sit on the couch. Since Jessica was too worn out to speak, I turned to Thomas for an explanation. Thomas, why is Jessica like this? Without any shame, he replied, Wait, are you blaming me? She slowed down because of her big belly. You know, housework is a woman's job. She even lied about feeling sick to avoid it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're making a woman with morning sickness do all the chores? Morning sickness isn't a disease. She even asked me for help with chores while I've been working all day. She's not in the way. You are. Please take care of her until she gives birth. That's when I realized Thomas had no understanding of pregnancy or fatherhood. I couldn't leave my precious daughter in his care. Fine, I'll take her in. I can't trust you to care for her. When I told Thomas this, he just shrugged. If your daughter is such a mess, it's because you failed to raise her properly. With no father around, she doesn't even know how to treat her husband. I'm the one suffering here. Once the baby is born, come pick it up. Meanwhile, please re-educate your daughter. Before he left, Thomas said he wanted me to fix my daughter's upbringing by the time the baby comes. Then he just walked away, leaving Jessica behind. The nerve of that man. I deeply regret letting Jessica marry Thomas. She sat there looking down, like a doll. I knew I needed to help her feel secure, so I went to the fridge, poured some milk into Jessica's favorite cup with a bit of sugar, and warmed it up in the microwave. Be careful, it's hot, I told her as I handed it over. When she took a sip, Jessica suddenly broke into tears. I sat next to her, rubbed her back, and listened to her story. Thomas was very ambitious and kept going to work parties even after Jessica became pregnant. He would leave her alone when she needed help and demanded that she do housework even when she was feeling sick. Get up, you've been lounging around, you haven't done the dishes or laundry, he'd say. Sometimes, he would even bring home colleagues after a night of drinking and make her cook and clean for them. I clenched my fists in anger at how my pregnant daughter was being treated like a servant. Jessica told me she didn't want to hurt my career, so she put up with it. She even asked doctors to explain her pregnancy symptoms to Thomas, but it didn't help. Her in-laws lived far away and could only be reached by flight, so she couldn't rely on them either. Jessica had always put others before herself. I hugged her and said, "From now on, it's okay to prioritize yourself, Jessica. If you're struggling, don't hesitate to ask for help. I'm sorry for not realizing this sooner." I gently stroked her head. "Mom, thank you," she said, and then she cried like a child. A few days after Jessica came to stay with me, her emotional state became worse as her due date approached. When I came home from work, the house was always clean. Even when I told her to rest, Jessica would still do chores, trying to lift heavy mattresses or change burnt-out light bulbs. Sometimes, she tried to pack her bags to go home, scared of her husband's anger. I thought she might need counseling, so I went to our neighbor, who used to be a therapist, and asked for a recommendation. "Lisa, do you have a moment? I need to talk about my daughter." Lisa welcomed me into her home and listened to my story. I shared Jessica's situation, and she and her husband, Kevin, recommended a good clinic. Jessica had also been feeling off, so she started visiting the hospital. Lisa and Kevin were concerned about Jessica, so while I was at work, Lisa would check in on her. Thankfully, Jessica started to recover and smiled more like she used to as her due date approached. I took Jessica to the hospital as her contractions started. I rubbed her back and wiped her sweat, encouraging her through the pain. As the contractions became closer together, I watched Jessica walk into the delivery room and sat in a chair, feeling restless and eager. Finally, I heard the baby's cries. A nurse came out to tell me that both mother and child were healthy, which was a relief. When I went to see them, Jessica was holding our sleeping baby in her arms. I felt angry at Thomas, but still told him that they had welcomed a healthy baby girl. As he entered the hospital room and saw his newborn, Thomas blurted out, "Yuck. Babies look like monkeys. They're not cute at all. Jessica, you're not even wearing makeup and just lying in bed. You're so lazy, put some effort into how you look. You're a woman." Before I could respond, the nurses and doctors who heard him lost their tempers. They surrounded Thomas and shouted, "Are you even a husband? Your wife just gave birth, risking her life. She's exhausted. Can't you say something nice?" But Thomas, visibly irritated, shot back, "Shut up. My mom worked right after giving birth. This is clearly laziness." I was shocked. I had never heard of a woman working immediately after childbirth, and it made sense that he wouldn't know since he had never shown interest in pregnancy or childbirth. Thomas stormed out and didn't even show up when Jessica was discharged. I was worried about sending her back to him, so I told Jessica she could stay with me. But she insisted on going home, saying it wouldn't be fair for the child to grow up without a father. Reluctantly, I called Thomas to see if he would pick them up. He replied, "I'm busy with work, so please take care of things there. I don't want to lose sleep because of a crying baby," and hung up right after that. I brought Jessica home, suggesting she stay until she got used to being a parent. Thomas hadn't bought any baby essentials, so we went shopping to create a nurturing environment. He hadn't even thought about a name for the baby because he was too focused on work, so Jessica and I chose one together. We named her Sarah. Our neighbors, Lisa and her husband, knew about the situation and helped with childcare, so Sarah grew up well. About 3 months after Sarah's birth, Thomas showed up unannounced to pick up Jessica and Sarah. "Hey. I'm here to pick you up. Hurry up. You're always so slow," Thomas yelled from the front door. By this time, Jessica's emotional instability after childbirth had settled, and she fully understood how terrible Thomas was. She had made up her mind to divorce him and had no intention of going back. From behind the door, Jessica said, "I won't be controlled by you anymore. I'm not coming back home. I'll mail you the divorce papers, so sign them." Thomas yelled back, "Are you kidding me? In today's world, a man with a wife and kids is more likely to succeed. What's the point of being married to you if we divorce? I'm never getting divorced." My daughter was furious, realizing her husband had married her and had a child just for his own career advancement. Before I could yell back at him, the door next door opened. Our neighbors, Lisa and her husband Kevin, stepped out, having heard Thomas's loud voice. When Thomas glanced at Lisa, his expression changed. Kevin, who was Thomas's supervisor, approached with a surprised look. "So, you're Jessica's husband? I can't believe a terrible man like you, who neglected his child for 3 months, is the one who married her. You lack empathy, and I can't trust my team to someone like you. I'll let the CEO know about this." "Consider your promotion cancelled," Kevin said sternly to Thomas. "Please, Kevin, reconsider," Thomas pleaded, clinging to him with tears in his eyes. Kevin cut him off, saying, "You have nothing more to say to me. You only ever cared about your work." Defeated, Thomas dropped to his knees. Kevin was known in the neighborhood and at work as a family man who couldn't tolerate Thomas treating his family like tools. Apparently, Thomas had been putting on a good face at work just to get a promotion. That day, Thomas went home quietly, but once at the office, he started pestering his colleagues and subordinates, saying, "Hey, could you put in a good word for me with the boss for a promotion?" When no one complied, he went straight to the CEO. "Sir, I've worked hard for this company every day. My sales numbers are consistently high. Please approve my promotion." The CEO replied, "I've heard from your boss that while your performance numbers look good, you've been using aggressive tactics to win contracts. Just raising your own numbers isn't enough. A deal that tarnishes the company's image is still negative, even if it's successful. If you can't consider that, you can't move up." Thomas left the CEO's office with a defeated look on his face. The CEO was well known for his integrity and was occasionally featured on TV. The CEO based his judgment on more than just the reports. After that, Thomas lost his motivation at work. His constant mistakes became a burden, and he was transferred to a regional department with hardly any responsibilities. At least he wasn't fired. Once the transfer was settled, Thomas kept coming to our house, saying, "Jessica, it was my fault. I want another chance. I want to see Sarah, I'm her father." Both Jessica and I ignored him. But when he became too persistent, Kevin warned him that he would report him to the CEO, which would get him fired. After that, we didn't see him anymore. It seemed his feelings for Jessica were shallow. When Kevin learned that Jessica was having trouble getting her divorce finalized, he referred her to a top-notch attorney. The divorce went smoothly, and Jessica was even able to claim compensation for emotional distress. After the divorce, Thomas moved to a rural area and seemed to be living a quiet, lonely life. Kevin told me that the last time Thomas came into the office, he looked unrecognizable. His shirt and suit were wrinkled, he had grown a beard, and he had lost a lot of weight. In the small town where Thomas moved, it's not easy to visit a dry cleaner or convenience store without a car. Whether he's trying to save gas or just can't be bothered, he might be struggling. Since he never helped with housework, he probably doesn't know how to take care of himself. He should regret how he treated Jessica like a servant when he was there all alone. Maybe Thomas feels like he has lost everything since the divorce and losing custody of Sarah. He even started to forget the child support payments he promised to make. When Jessica called to remind him, he would tell her how hard his life was, almost in tears. I advised Jessica to inform her lawyer, and as soon as she requested child support through legal channels, it got paid. So far, we haven't heard anything from Thomas about wanting to see Sarah. If Sarah wants to reach out to him, we will, but Jessica and I agreed that we would pour lots of love into raising her into a fine adult, even without a father around.